We need to clamp down on pharmaceutical companies and the extortion of people for life-saving and life-critical medications. Essentially, we need to stop holding society ransom to that. It is unethical and it's unreasonable. Now, in the past 10 years, the cost of chemotherapy treatment has gone up by 10 times. It now costs 10 times what it used to cost, what it cost 20 years ago to treat people with chemotherapy. And that's messed up. Now, I mean, you could make the argument that yes, there's new chemotherapy drugs being developed, and there's new research always, and all these things. But at the end of the day, I'm sorry, 10 times as much as it cost 20 years ago, we're being gouged. And the reason that these pharmaceutical companies are and can gouge us is because it's our lives that are in their hands. It's all of it. All of our lives are in their hands. So the Martin Shkreli guy, that guy that the guy that bought the rights to the AIDS, to the medication that helps people with AIDS. And he's an interesting case. He didn't get nailed to a cross for what he did. He got nailed to a cross for how he did it. Okay? The system that is in place that allowed Shkreli to go ahead and say that, oh, well, here's a drug that people need or they're not going to die, and insurance companies are required by law to provide it for you if you have private insurance. I can make this drug 1,000 times what it cost before and make a ton of money off the very few people that actually use it, who have those healthcare costs. And there's absolutely nothing anybody can do about it. The reason he got nailed to a cross is because that's the same thing that they all do. The reason that the reason that the chemotherapy costs 10 times what it did 20 years ago, they're using the exact same mechanism that Shkreli used. They're taking advantage of the fact that people need this stuff or they're going to die. But instead of just jacking it up 1,000 times overnight and holding the whole world hostage, they know that for something like cancer treatment, nobody would ever go for that. Nobody would ever buy that. There'd be revolution. But if you throw the frog in the pot of water that's cold and you turn up the heat, that frog will sit there and boil to death without jumping out. It's what they're doing to us. They're not taking those costs and they're jacking them up a crazy amount to hold us all hostage. They're slowly acclimating us. Every year it goes up a little more. Every year it costs 15 or 20% more. Every year it costs a little bit more. We just keep getting used to it. Shkreli got nailed to a cross because he exposed their scheme. Shkreli got nailed to a cross because he was so cavalier about what he did that he exposed a massive flaw in the in the way that we deal with pharmaceutical companies and allow them to get away with doing what they're doing. You put a spotlight on them. And the reason that the politicians and the media called him out on it and made such a big deal out of it wasn't because of what he did. because they don't want you to know. They don't want you to think about what they're doing. Every time you turn on CNN, every other commercial is for some pharmaceutical with a 30-second list of possible side effects at the end. Okay? That's every other CNN commercial. And don't even get me started on the politicians. They're the ones that are facilitating this whole thing to begin with, because there's pharmaceutical company lobbyists that are finding really clever ways of getting money and resources and power into their pockets. So no, the reason that the media and the politicians took Shkreli to task wasn't because he did something bad. It's because he did something bad in such a big, bad, obvious, visible way that he exposed what they do and the little game they've got rigged. And that needs to stop somehow. There needs to be restrictions. There needs to be restrictions on what a pharmaceutical company can and cannot do with a patent for a drug that it owns that is critical to people's lives. Okay? That's not a free market anymore. You know, that's pulling a gun, putting it to somebody's head and saying, now we're negotiating. I am in favor of free markets for the most part, determining the direction that society goes. I only really see the government as a balancing, correcting force. So if the free market starts to go off if some kind of aberration, some kind of cancer within the free market starts to develop, and it starts to push society in the wrong direction, automation would be a perfect example of that. In its current state and in its current form, automation it's bad for society. It's detrimental. It means that a lot of people are now unemployed and they have nothing to do, and they're impoverished because of it. In that case, I support the government, government intervention, because it's correcting an aberration that went sideways with the idea of the free market, and which currently we have unions and businesses and our current structure of government all struggling and fighting and pulling in different directions to looking for different things in order to keep moving forward, and it just keeps getting worse and worse and worse. I support the government intervening in that respect to redirect the way society is moving to a way that can utilize automation as an asset to improve everybody's life. Because fundamentally, a machine that does your job for you, it's a good thing, okay? And the more machines that we have that can do more of the life necessitating jobs that we need done, the more machines we can have of those should, in theory, make everybody's life easier, safer, more comfortable, more secure. And it seems to be going the other direction right now, which is so strange. In that respect, I support government intervention, but as much as possible, unless it's guiding society towards a unified goal that makes sense, I am in favor of letting the free market be. Letting those people that have good ideas have the ability to excel in those ideas. Resource distribution is it's a complicated subject. But there's the thing is that there's two different types of resources that can be redistributed freely. And one is easy to do, one is a lot harder to do. And some things should be more socialized than other things, right? Things that are based on an idea or a creation or science. Things that can be repeated endlessly for low cost, and the value was in the creation of it, should be on a social platform. The cost in the drugs is not the manufacturing of the drugs. Almost all the cost that is associated with medications comes from the R&D and the science that went in and the research that went into creating that drug. Okay. So then, but then the drug gets created and now it's out there. So the question is, if you have a drug that somebody spent $10 billion developing, right? And you need to see your money back for that, and maybe that's a critical drug. So in order to get that $10 billion back from it, you have to charge, you got to charge $20 a pill. Because, maybe there's not a lot of people that have whatever condition you're treating. You got to charge $20 a pill. And that means that there's a lot of people out there that are not going to get that drug because maybe they can't afford $20 a pill. But the knowledge is already out there. The cost of reproducing the pill, now that you know what to put in it, is marginal. The cost of creating the pill in the first place is large. But once the pill is created, the question is, if it costs next to nothing to produce the pill, how can you let somebody get sick not having access to that pill because you're asking an exorbitant cost that's going to cost them $50,000 a year, and they simply don't have the income and they simply can't do it? That's where the idea of socialization makes sense. When you have a product that its value is in its idea and it can be replicated endlessly for near nothing. Well, let's not say near nothing. Where it can be replicated endlessly for a very low cost. For these reasons, there needs to be a serious overhaul of the way we approach regulating what pharmaceutical companies are and aren't allowed to do, and what kind of hostage they can hold us to in terms of drugs and medications that are critical to our life and critical to our well-being.